Hi, my name is Kiara Quinones, and today I'm going to give an analysis of Mad Max Fury Road through Judith Butler's theories on sex and gender. Mad Max Fury Road through the lens of Judith Butler's theories on sex and gender. First, I want to introduce you guys to Judith Butler. She is an American philosopher and gender theorist. And we're going to compare her theories today to Mad Max Fury Road, a film by George Miller. First, I want to point out some topics from Judith Butler's Bodies That Matter book. Some topics she speaks about are sex and gender, performativity, and regulatory ideals. Sex refers to the biological or physiological characteristics of males and females. She believes that sex should not be defined only by body matter. Gender refers to the socially constructed characteristics of a man and woman. Butler believes that no one can choose their gender. We also speak about regulatory norms later. We're going to take her theories that we will discuss more in a short while and view them in a film called Mad Max Fury Road. This is a film based on a woman named Furiosa, who goes against her norms to become a fighter of justice and helps the views of a war leader escape from captivity in which they are only used to reproduce. Along her journey of leading them to safety, she comes across various aggressive males willing to do anything to kill her. Now let's connect the two. Mad Max Fury Road in the eyes of Judith Butler's theory, sex and gender. Butler's theory of performativity. First, we're going to break her theory down a little bit so we can have a better understanding. Let's start by getting into the theory. Many people get confused with Butler's theory and interpret that she identifies gender as a role. She wants to stress the performance as different from performativity. Performance can be defined as acts and roles. That is not what she means when she speaks about performativity. Performativity is a series of events that make something true. Gender and sex are not facts about an individual. Sex and gender are a phenomenon. You cannot wear gender as if it's part of your wardrobe. It's not a role. Butler believes that no one has a gender or sex from the start, and that is constantly being produced and reproduced in everyday functions. In the preface of Bodies That Matter, she says, one who decides on its gender and is clearly not its gender from the start, it fails to realize that its existence is already decided by gender. This means that gender is not a fact about an individual. It is actually a phenomenon that is constantly being produced by what we wear, how we talk, how we walk, or what we look like. We give off gender in different ways through behavior. Butler believes that no one has a gender. This is a quote from Butler's Bodies That Matter introduction. The category of sex is, from the start, normative. It is what Foucault has called a regulatory ideal. In this sense, then, sex not only functions as a norm, but is part of a regulatory practice that produces the bodies it governs. Butler, page 1. Sex is subject to regulatory ideals because it is usually only associated with the act of sex or physical parts of sex. Butler wants people to understand that sex is not simply a fact, but a series of regulatory norms that need to be practiced in order to constitute the materiality of the body's sex. In other terms, her beliefs may seem contradictory, but here it is in the most simplest form. Sex and gender are not what we are, it's what we do that comes from within that gives us that sex or gender. For example, a female is not a female because she was born that way, but because her actions, apparel, and body language define her as a female, and the same goes for males. She believes society has a problem with the way they speak about sex and gender. Intelligibility is a word that she also uses to describe the individuals who fall in the normative criteria and are the ones that can easily be read. When an individual is hard to read, materially, they are considered intelligible. Judith Butler informs us that sexual differences are usually determined by most people as material or physical differences, but she argues that there is not much of a difference at all, and that the conversations or discourse around sexual difference is what causes the actual sexual difference in the first place. When individuals don't fit normal criteria, according to Judith Butler, they are called abject. In terms of performativity, a person may speak differently, dress differently, walk differently than the way we are perceived, which then moves them from the normal zone or expected reading zone. Their behavior defines their gender. This is where language becomes an issue. Someone is not a gender because of how they look like or what they are, but how they behave. Now let's apply this to Mad Max Fury Road so that we can get a better understanding. Performativity in female roles in Mad Max Fury Road. We are now going to discuss how performativity is seen in female roles throughout the movie. The top picture we have Furiosa on top of Max in an engagement fighting scene that was in the movie. And in the bottom we have some of the wives who were also part of a fighting scene. Some comments the men from Mad Max might make about the woman are: women are not strong, women do not know how to protect, and women are only useful for their reproductive organs. Here we have images from a scene where the women fight and protect themselves. Whether they were clothed like Furiosa or half naked like the wives, they were both capable of self-defense. Women in this film are disrespected. The most beautiful ones are chosen to make what are called perfect babies. These women are only used for reproduction. Their leader, Immortan Joe, believes the wives have no other value. He even refers to Splendid's unborn child as his property. They often say, a quote, "We are not things," which express how they feel when their bodies are handled like objects that are owned. When the women are set free, a war boy named Slit yells, his breeders, his prized breeders, he wants them back. This comes to show how the women are viewed only by the materiality of their sex, which Butler would argue is completely wrong. Yes, women are able to reproduce, but it does not define their gender. Furiosa, on the other hand, defies that standard. She is very strong, fights, wears her hair very short, and dresses tomboyish. Some may say she is not a female. However, she still has reproductive organs. Performativity shown here would explain that Furiosa behaves in a way that clarifies her gender. When someone looks like a woman but has characteristics that don't, in the eyes of the majority, correspond, they are often viewed as more manly. She is not a man because she takes on the typically male-dominated role of a fighter and protector. Performativity in male appearance in Mad Max Fury Road. Immortan Joe, as the leader, needs to appear strong and scary in order to be respected and feared. Actually, he's an out-of-shape slob and wears a plastic muscle suit. He hides his imperfections, especially if he wants to be the leader of the strong war boys. There is an idea that men must be ripped in order to be considered masculine. Immortan Joe is clearly ashamed that he is now old and unfit. He wants to fit the category of being a man by covering his face with an intimidating mask and costume. He is sort of mimicking what a man is supposed to look like, and it's quite foolish. Him and the men of Mad Max Fury Road believe men have power just because they are men. When his son was pronounced dead, he was given the title of Alpha Prime Male. This made him furious to know that his son, which was made perfect in every way. The men are intelligible and falling in the norm criteria. They are expected to be strong and fighters, so Immortan Joe is keeping that view alive, being the leader who also looks strong and fearful. Now we're going to view some ways that men are defying the norms in Mad Max. We see before that Immortan Joe is falling in the criteria of intelligibility. Now we're going to see the opposite. Normal behavior for a man in Mad Max Fury Road would be to fight. Nux and Max at first were fighters. When they approached the woman, they no longer want to harm them. They actually ended up needing them to set them free from their bonding chain and for a ride of safety. In Mad Max Fury Road, every other man is superior to women. Instead, though these women have half-naked, the men respect them. The men actually begin to protect them. Typically, a man will throw himself at a beautiful woman, especially whose body is exposed in ways the wives were. When the Keeper of the Seeds asks the men, "Who are they? They are reliable," is what Furiosa responded. They fall out of the normative. They are opposite of the expected. It took that one phrase for the others to let their guard down and realize they were not like all the other men, not one bit, but they were reliable. These men are considered to be intelligible in the eyes of Judith Butler. They look like strong men who fall under the characteristics of other men, but their mannerism make it hard for them to read. They are opposite from the expected behavior. They are intelligible. Now I want to talk about performative in movie roles. Here we have a few films where men played roles of women. A female in appearance, such as gender and physically, sex, is casted for a role as a female. A male in appearance, gender, and physically, sex, is casted for a role as a male. So these are the typical roles we usually see in movies. Men have men roles, female have female roles. I want to start by saying that I am not trying to take the focus away from the acting. I want to take that focus away from the acting aspect of this example in American culture. Though these men played female roles, I want to focus on how they were viewed as a gender they acted like as if it was their true gender. Just as Adam Sandler's character of Jill was seen as a woman by his family in the movie. Why? Because of the way he carried himself, the way he behaved, the way he dressed and walked. He was a female. Butler would tell the actors Robin Williams and Martin Lawrence that their acting performance is not defining their gender. I want to make that clear. Their acting performance is not defining their gender. That is simply a performance. But she would tell their characters that are in the story, if she was part of the movie, that they are creating the phenomenon that she speaks about so heavily. In society, there are many people who dress outside of the normative. The public may view this as a role or as acting, especially if a naturally born male wants to wear women's clothing every time he leaves his house and defines his gender as a woman. It is not up to us to make these assumptions, and we must truly be careful what language we use about the materiality of the bodies we come across daily. That is my presentation of Judith Butler's theories being applied to the movie Mad Max. Thank you so much for watching.